She was a princess, but unlike any other. While the world admired the royal glamour, she paid attention to the quiet, unnoticed things happening behind the kitchen doors. She once openly admitted that she couldn't cook at all, and yet her name became inseparable from the royal kitchen, a place few would ever expect a princess to step into. How could someone who didn't know how to cook leave such a deep impression on the royal chefs, earning not just their respect, but their heartfelt admiration? The answer lies in the memories of someone who was there. He spent 11 years as a royal chef at Buckingham Palace, serving Queen Elizabeth, Princess Diana, Prince William, and Prince Harry, and now he's ready to speak. Untold stories, private, emotional, and sometimes even shocking moments about a princess the world thought it already knew. Leave a 1 in the comments if this story speaks to you, or a 0 if you have a different take. Share your thoughts with us, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next, where we reveal every hidden layer of this extraordinary story. For over 2 decades, Darren McGrady quietly observed from the outside as royal stories were told and uncomfortable truths were buried under fabricated headlines. The former royal chef who served the Queen, Princess Diana, and the princes patiently waited while history painted its own narrative. He remained in the shadows, silently witnessing pivotal moments, events that shaped the nation, but never spoke up. Throughout his time working in the palace, Darren witnessed numerous tragedies, from the broken marriage of Princess Diana and Prince Charles to the suffering Diana endured facing betrayal and fractured relationships within the royal family. Darren McGrady saw it all, from major events to private moments filled with pain, yet he never spoke out. Instead, he observed and waited while the outside world continued to spin, crafting its own version of the story, not always reflecting the true nature of events. After years of silence, Darren finally decided to share what he had witnessed. For the first time in many years, he spoke up, breaking his silence to tell the real story, not just of Princess Diana's life, but of the changes in the royal family that he had seen. These were not dark secrets he simply wished to keep hidden, but truths he felt needed to be acknowledged and shared in order to understand the pain, sacrifice, and struggles Diana faced throughout her life. But now, at the age of 63, he no longer wants to remain silent. With years of restraint, McGrady has finally spoken up, and the central figure in his revelations is Queen Camilla. Darren's story with Princess Diana didn't begin at lavish banquets or beneath dazzling chandeliers, but in the quiet corners of the royal kitchen. When he started working at Buckingham Palace in the 1980s, his life was intertwined with preparing meals for the royal family. However, it was in these calm moments that his relationship with Diana gradually formed. Despite being a public figure, Princess Diana was a completely different person in the small, private moments in the kitchen. Light evening meals, simple conversations, and Diana's gestures of kindness allowed Darren to sense the pain she concealed behind her public persona. What ultimately made Darren unable to remain silent anymore were the changes he witnessed when Camilla began to appear in the royal family's life. With Camilla's presence, everything seemed to change. Her appearance not only altered the atmosphere in the palace, but also changed the way things were organized. Even Diana's mementos began to be discarded, and her marks began to fade. McGrady, who had witnessed it all, could no longer stay silent as these changes became more apparent. And when he decided to speak, his revelations not only discussed the changes in the palace, but also the emotions and wounds he had witnessed during his years working with Princess Diana. In 1982, the Buckingham Palace kitchen staff consisted of nearly 20 chefs, including Darren, a young and enthusiastic chef, but one who held the lowest position. His first tasks were mainly peeling vegetables and preparing frozen products for the palace staff. However, fate had different plans. That same year, the United Kingdom joyfully welcomed the birth of Prince William. While the entire world's eyes were on the royal baby, a quieter relationship was slowly forming between Darren and Princess Diana. This relationship would go through ups and downs, joy, pain, and ultimately loss. Working under the supervision of head chef Gabriel "Chumi" Darren not only learned recipes but also how to survive in the strict world of the royal family. There were unwritten rules about how to speak, and especially about staying silent in front of the royal family. In such an environment, silence was nearly mandatory. Every word, gesture, or even glance had to be carefully considered because even the smallest mistake could lead to unforeseen consequences. However, Diana was different. She always stood out from the crowd. Despite being a member of the royal family, she didn't follow those rigid rules. She had her own unique style, approachable and friendly, which made her stand out amidst the formality and strict regulations of the monarchy. Every time Diana appeared, she brought a refreshing breeze of brightness and freedom that no one could ignore. Darren's first encounter with Diana took place at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, where the royal family spent their summer holidays. Unlike other members of the royal family who maintained a distance from the staff, Diana would often casually enter the kitchen. Sometimes she would wear a bathrobe, sometimes walk barefoot, and would simply ask for a little yogurt, fresh orange juice, or some fruit. Her requests were simple, but what impressed Darren the most was the way she always said, "Thank you." She would even help set the table, an act that surprised the kitchen staff. Those small moments painted a very different picture of Diana, one far removed from what the press often portrayed. Diana brought laughter and a sense of lightness to the palace, a place often weighed down by rituals and rules. Gradually, her relationship with Darren grew closer, not through grand gestures, but through small, everyday habits. These seemingly simple routines had a powerful connection. One of Diana's favorite habits was to request a glass of juice every evening made with carrots, celery, and apples. Every night she would choose the ingredients based on her mood. These requests weren't anything extraordinary, but they became a small ritual, a way for Diana to find comfort in the stressful royal life. And through these small requests, Darren silently showed his care and attention, making it a meaningful gesture. Though these were simple requests, they were Diana's way of finding peace amidst the chaos of royal life. However, as the 1980s transitioned into the 1990s, the lightness and joy that Diana had brought to the palace began to fade. Her relationship with Prince Charles was starting to unravel, and the shadow of Camilla Parker Bowles loomed over everything in Diana's life. These changes happened subtly and gradually, but they were undeniable, and anyone could see them. Diana no longer maintained the same cheerful and lighthearted demeanor. The loneliness and pain she was feeling started to become more apparent. Her small requests became fewer, replaced by unspoken emotions that Darren could read in every action Diana took. Her marriage was under immense strain, and the shadow of betrayal and disappointment from Charles began to cloud the happy moments they once shared. The changes began in a subtle manner, easily overlooked by others, but Darren couldn't help but notice. Gradually, he saw Diana lose her usual appetite, a habit she had always maintained. On previous nights, she would often request a glass of juice at the end of the day, a ritual she considered essential for relaxation. However, there were nights when she no longer asked for it. Though Darren was concerned, he never gave up. He continued preparing the juice every night, whether or not she requested it, hoping that it might make her feel more at ease. One night, when she hadn't asked for anything, Darren decided to bring the juice to her room. When she received the glass, she drank it in one go without saying a word, and in that moment, Darren noticed that she looked different. She wasn't just tired, she appeared to be carrying an invisible pain. Diana looked as though she had been crying. In those quiet, simple moments, Darren began to gradually understand the pain that Diana was trying to conceal behind her public smile. Although she always appeared strong and graceful in front of the public, deep inside, she was enduring wounds that no one could see. Long before the truth was widely exposed, Darren had witnessed the signs of the suffering that Diana carried each day within the palace walls. Despite being a royal chef, there was little he could do except observe and care for her in those small moments. But how could someone like Darren, just a staff member within the palace, witness Diana's pain when the outside world had no idea? Stay tuned to learn more about this moving story. It all began with a simple question, but one that carried profound meaning. For over 2 decades, Darren McGrady had steadfastly remained silent about matters concerning Camilla Parker Bowles, especially those related to the royal family. With his unwavering loyalty to Princess Diana, Darren had always tried to avoid any controversies or media dramas surrounding the turmoil in the royal household. He had built a reputation for himself as the silent protector of Diana's legacy, someone who always stood on the sidelines, never sharing or engaging in conversations about the royal family's upheavals, whether in the kitchen or during discussions with colleagues. Darren had always told himself that his job was to serve the royal family faithfully, and his duty was to keep the memories and legacy of Diana in private. Even though stories and events related to the royal family were often brought to light, Darren remained steadfast in protecting the dignity and values that Diana had left behind. He never spoke out, never shared what he had witnessed, and never participated in any conversations or debates concerning the turmoil within the royal family. However, one day, everything changed when his story with Diana compelled him to break his silence. In early 2023, just months before the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla, Darren did something unexpected. In an interview, when a reporter suddenly asked him about the coronation, Darren calmly responded, "Time has passed, and I believe you can respect the present while still honoring the past." His answer seemed thoughtful and balanced, but for those who supported Diana, it felt like a betrayal that was hard to accept. Some believed that Darren was encouraging people to forget the past and the sacrifices Diana had endured, especially when her marriage to Charles broke down because of Camilla. Reactions on social media quickly escalated, with many criticizing Darren for what they saw as his tacit approval of Camilla's role in the royal family. Darren's statement was not just a declaration of harmony between the past and the present. It marked a significant shift in his perception of the royal family. For many, Darren was no longer the silent protector of Diana's legacy. He now appeared to be trying to reconcile with the new reality of the royal family. Although he explained that he was simply aiming for a more mature perspective, the public's furious response indicated that they could not accept this change. They expected him to maintain his loyalty to Diana and everything she represented despite the shifts within the palace. For many, the response seemed reasonable and thoughtful, but on social media, outrage erupted. Within hours, Diana's fans and royal watchers flooded the internet criticizing Darren. Some expressed sympathy, but many accused him of betraying Diana. One fan wrote, "Diana's soul will never rest if you cheer for the woman who hurt her." The comments grew increasingly harsh as the backlash gained momentum. Although Darren had avoided discussing Camilla for many years, this time he spoke up. But once again, his explanation did little to calm the public's fury. He stated, "That doesn't mean I've forgotten what Diana went through. It simply means I've matured and my perspective has changed." However, Diana's admirers didn't want to hear this. They expected unwavering loyalty, and Darren did not meet that expectation. For them, changing his stance on Camilla and the royal family wasn't just a shift in attitude, but a betrayal of the legacy Diana had tied to her life. The public's disappointment was inevitable. For many years, Darren had been seen as one of the closest people to Diana, a witness to the pain she endured and a companion during her toughest moments. So when he spoke out, many felt betrayed. Despite Darren's attempt to explain that maturity and a shift in perspective were necessary for those who had pledged absolute loyalty to Diana, it was unacceptable. They wanted to see a Darren who remained unchanged, someone who would always steadfastly defend Diana, regardless of how much everything else had shifted. By 1992, the fairy tale was over. The announcement of Diana and Prince Charles's divorce sent shockwaves across the world. For Darren McGrady, witnessing their marriage crumble from the palace kitchen felt like the end of a painful chapter. Diana packed up her things and moved to Kensington Palace, where she lived with her two sons, William and Harry. Darren thought his journey with Diana had come to an end. But then the phone rang. It was Diana. She wanted him to be her personal chef at Kensington Palace, and this marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Life at Kensington was very different from Buckingham Palace. Gone were the grand ceremonies and strict protocols. Diana lived more simply, more freely. She spent more time with her two sons, and Darren, as her personal chef, became an integral part of this small family's life. However, despite the greater freedom, the pain always lingered in Diana's heart. Darren witnessed difficult moments, nights when she struggled with loneliness and loss, times when she smiled through the pain, hiding her sorrow behind a facade. Darren didn't hesitate, he accepted immediately. Life at Kensington was completely different. Gone were the rigid formalities of Buckingham Palace, gone were the grand ceremonial dinners. In their place were quiet breakfasts with the boys, simple evening meals, and warm, intimate moments shared between Diana and her small, close-knit household staff. There was a sense of ease and genuine connection, a kind of everyday peace that had been missing from royal life. Yet no matter how different the setting or how comforting the atmosphere, the pain had not disappeared. It lingered unspoken but ever present beneath the surface of even the most peaceful moments. The shadow of Camilla Parker Bowles still loomed over Diana's life, even though no one spoke of it directly. Whispers circulated throughout the palace, stories left untold, all pointing to one thing: Camilla and Charles. They didn't just share a secretive relationship, but had a profound impact on Diana's life. Darren, as an observer from the outside, overheard many troubling stories about the royal family's situation. One of the most shocking and heartbreaking tales he heard was that Camilla had allegedly said to a friend, "He is officially mine." He always has been. Those words, cold and arrogant, were not only a confession of their relationship, but also a dagger to Diana's heart. Diana, although always trying to maintain a strong and smiling exterior, had to face the inevitable pain as the secrets and harsh truths about Charles and Camilla's relationship slowly came to light. This not only hurt Diana, but also came as a major shock to those closest to her, especially Darren, who had served her for many years. Camilla's silence about the wounds she had caused Diana made everything even heavier. Darren was not just a servant in the kitchen. He was a silent witness to the unraveling royal life torn apart by decisions and betrayal. Did Diana ever hear those words? Darren wasn't sure. But what he did know was that Diana carried invisible wounds, and they ran deep. So much of what she endured was hidden beneath the surface, unspoken and private. Yet despite that pain, she never allowed it to harden her. HIV doesn't make people dangerous, so you can shake their hands and hug them. God knows they need it. She once said a simple truth delivered with quiet courage at a time when fear and stigma were everywhere. Even in sorrow, Diana radiated extraordinary grace. No matter how heavy the emotional burdens she bore, no matter how isolated or misunderstood she may have felt, she continued to meet the world and the people in it with compassion, dignity, and warmth. It was this unwavering humanity. That was what made her different. That was what made her Diana. It wasn't just her public grace, but the quiet strength and warmth she showed when no one was watching. As weeks turned into months, Darren and Diana grew closer. He began to see the private side of her pain, the silent moments, the distant looks, the weight she carried alone. And at the center of it all was still Camilla, the unshakable presence behind much of her sorrow. One evening after dinner, as Darren was clearing the dishes, Diana stayed behind. There was a pause in her movement, a quiet tension, as if she was holding something and unsure whether to speak. This time, she wasn't there for a snack. She spoke softly, almost thinking aloud, words Darren would never forget. "I always knew I would never be queen. The girl who took my husband will one day become queen." Darren froze, not knowing how to respond. But Diana didn't seek comfort. Gently wiping away a tear, she added with a sad smile, "Don't worry, just listen." That brief exchange revealed years of pain and disappointment. Behind the palace's gleaming walls, far from the cameras and flashing lights, Diana's reality was shattered dreams and unhealed wounds. The loud arguments between Diana and Charles weren't just disagreements in a broken relationship. They were proof of the deep emotional breakdown in their marriage. Especially when Camilla's name was mentioned, the tension grew. Darren, standing at a distance, had often heard their angry voices echoing through the palace halls, making him wonder how this woman could cause Diana so much pain. These arguments became an inevitable part of daily life, and Diana's anger, although hidden behind her public smile, became more evident than ever. But deep within Darren's heart, he understood the real reason Diana had to endure. Charles, though married to Diana, could never let go of Camilla. The long-standing relationship between Charles and Camilla, though kept discreet, had existed long before Diana and Charles' marriage officially fell apart. The shadow of Camilla always loomed over every argument, every word from Charles, and ultimately Camilla's hold over Charles became the main source of Diana's endless pain. This not only hurt Diana emotionally, but also represented an unforgivable betrayal in her heart. The price Diana had to pay for this betrayal was immense, and the constant tug-of-war between love and betrayal never ceased to haunt her. By the end of 1992, Diana's private pain was no longer hidden, but became a public story that shook the world. That year, the infamous Camilla-gate tapes erupted onto the front pages of newspapers across the UK and many other countries. The secretly recorded phone calls between Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles revealed intimate and profound conversations between them. This confirmed Diana's long-held suspicions about the ongoing relationship between her husband and Camilla, a truth that Diana had only been able to guess, but could never prove for years. These tapes were a shock to both the royal family and the public, as they revealed what had been happening behind the closed doors of the palace. The entire nation of the UK was stunned by the revelations, and the truth being exposed shook the royal family to its core. What had previously been mere speculation and rumors became undeniable facts, pushing the royal family's life and Diana's marriage to Charles to new heights of tension and pain. The story from the tapes not only revealed the betrayal in their marriage, but also disrupted everything around Diana, turning the suffering she had endured in silence for so long into a public burden. The royal family, known for its meticulous image control, suddenly found itself facing a massive scandal that no press statement could quell. The incident shook the entire kingdom, tearing down the curtain of secrecy surrounding the private lives of royal family members. The tapes of Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles exposed a painful truth that Diana had been silently enduring for years. Despite the public outcry, the royal family could not stop the storm that was crashing down on their image. In the midst of this, Diana never once mentioned the tapes to Darren McGrady. She never spoke of the humiliation or betrayal she was enduring, even though the clandestine calls and the revelations from the tapes had exposed the full truth. What do you think made Diana stay silent in the midst of a scandal that shook the entire royal family? Share your thoughts in the comments, because some truths only come to life when we choose to confront them together. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to give it a like to support us and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on more exciting content. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Although Diana never directly spoke about it, Darren could clearly feel that something had changed in her after the scandal broke. The change was not just in her actions or words, but in the way she presented herself in daily life. The warmth and charm she always radiated to those around her began to fade. Darren noticed the exhaustion and pain she had been enduring becoming more evident in the simplest moments. He realized that the pain Diana was facing was not just a story of betrayal, but the anguish of a woman trying to confront unchangeable truths. The woman Darren had once known joyful, warm, and graceful had now become quiet and distant. The moments of joy and intimacy during meals that he had witnessed slowly turned into tense and heavy ones. Diana's interest in food, which had always been fragile, seemed to fade even further. As time passed, her emotional breakdown seemed to permeate every aspect of her life, especially during meals, a time when in the past, Diana had found small joys amidst the great pressures. The signs of her eating disorder, which Darren had quietly noticed long before, were now clearer than ever. Diana never spoke openly about her suffering, and Darren, though witnessing each small piece of her pain, never asked questions or tried to understand. He simply served quietly, taking care of her in a discreet manner, not wanting to add to the burdens she already bore. Through his silence and patient presence, Darren became the only companion during those painful moments of Diana's life, when she seemed to have lost both her light and her belief in herself. He merely observed concerned as her struggles became more evident behind closed doors. Then, in November 1995, the interview that shook the monarchy took place. Sitting with journalist Martin Bashir on the BBC's Panorama program, Diana did something no royal had ever done before. She openly spoke about the darkest parts of her life. Millions of people across the UK and the world watched as she made that iconic statement. When there are 3 people in this marriage, it's a bit crowded. When Diana made this statement in her famous interview, it shocked not only the public, but also the media. This was a breakthrough moment where Diana openly acknowledged her suffering and admitted that Camilla Parker Bowles' presence was the main reason her marriage to Prince Charles had fallen apart. This statement wasn't just a direct critique of Camilla, but a revelation of a truth that had been hidden for many years. For many, it was a powerful accusation, like a bomb dropped on the public, shaking the entire royal family to its core. Darren knew better than anyone the burdens Diana had to bear, the arguments between her and Charles. When Camilla's name was mentioned, the unspoken pain that could still be felt in the palace air. In the many years he worked alongside Diana, Darren witnessed a woman who was once cheerful, bright, and always bringing joy to those around her, slowly becoming withdrawn and distant. Diana never openly spoke of the pain she was enduring, but it was all evident in the small changes in her actions and demeanor. What Darren knew, even before Diana officially revealed it to the world, was that her marriage was no longer just a matter between her and Charles. It had become a fierce battle with the shadow of Camilla, a battle Diana had faced alone for many years. For many years, he had witnessed her silent pain. Now, the rest of the world was finally seeing the truth. Diana's courage didn't stop there. In the same interview, she shared her battle with bulimia, a struggle that many had judged or misunderstood. "You try to hurt yourself on the outside because you want help," she admitted, her voice steady, yet full of emotion. It was a raw moment of humanity that changed the public's perception forever. Those critics who once called her dramatic now stood behind her, seeing her pain from a new angle. By 1993, about a year after settling in Kensington Palace, Darren noticed another change. This time, it felt different, more hopeful. Diana began focusing on her health, exercising regularly, and dedicating herself fully to charity work. In interviews, she openly discussed her eating disorder, explaining that conditions like anorexia and bulimia were ways people avoid real nourishment, both emotionally and physically. Darren witnessed her radiance return. She looked the healthiest I had ever seen her. He then became the Queen's chef for 11 years at Buckingham Palace, and later spent 4 years with Princess Diana. One of the things I learned while there is that we need to cook food, simple basic dishes. It was the first time he saw Diana truly reclaim her life, not as a princess defined by the palace walls, but as a woman choosing to heal and move forward. In a short time, hope re-emerged. But how did Diana, after finally regaining her life and happiness, face such a tragic end? You won't want to miss that, miss. On August 31st, 1997, it was a peaceful Sunday at Kensington Palace. The palace kitchen remained quiet with none of the usual bustle or noise. For Darren McGrady, everything seemed like just another ordinary day. He had prepared a simple yet cozy meal for Princess Diana, who was expected to return from Paris that evening. As always, this meal was an act of care from Darren to Diana, who had become an important part of his life. Diana was to come back ready to spend time with her 2 sons, William and Harry, before they returned to school. It was a short break, a quiet moment that Darren hoped would bring peace to Diana's small family. However, what followed changed everything. Everything was soon shattered when the horrific news of a car accident in Paris spread. Diana, who Darren had hoped would return and enjoy the meal he had prepared, would never again step through the palace kitchen door. The simple plans, the family moments he thought would continue, were abruptly replaced with an indescribable pain and loss. Diana's death became a shocking event not only for the royal family but for the entire world, leaving a massive void that no one could fill. It was supposed to be a peaceful day filled with family time, a normal moment in the midst of her otherwise public and often chaotic life. But life had other plans, cruel and sudden. The first sign that something was wrong came as a breaking news headline on the television. Princess Diana had been in a car accident. Darren was frozen in place. His heart raced. Surely it was a mistake, a false report, but the updates kept coming. Within minutes, every channel was broadcasting the unimaginable. Princess Diana had passed away at the age of 36. Shocking allegations surrounded her death. Authorities were now investigating new and sensational claims that she had been murdered by the British government. "I thought it was just a joke," Darren would later admit. But as the reality hit him, he found himself standing motionless in the palace kitchen, staring at the meal he had so carefully prepared for her. He clung to the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, those reports were wrong, that she would walk through the door, tired from her trip but safe with a smile on her face. And then came the moment that shattered all remaining hope. The palace faxed over Diana's will, a clear sign that she would not be returning. That was the moment that truly marked the end, a silent but undeniable instant. No one could imagine the rapid shift in the atmosphere. Within hours, the laughter and life that had once filled the halls of Kensington Palace suddenly quieted, enveloped in a heavy, painful silence. The air in the palace, once alive with energy and activity, now felt hollow and sorrowful. Those moments were like a cold shock, and everyone in the palace could feel the profound loss. The pain wasn't just the loss of Diana, it was also the overwhelming sense of emptiness, one that couldn't be filled. The staff, who had spent so much time serving and caring for Diana, now stood in silence, unsure of what to do in the terrible quiet that surrounded them. The atmosphere, once brimming with conversations and laughter, was now left with only fleeting thoughts and quiet sorrow. Diana's death didn't just change the lives of the royal family. It changed everyone who had been close to her, especially those who had cared for her during the quiet, tender moments. The staff, many of whom had protected, served, and loved Diana for years, now could not hold back their emotions. They wept, struggling to accept the heartbreaking news. Darren stood among them, his heart heavy, unable to believe what had just happened. He softly spoke, his eyes still fixed on the untouched plate. "I had prepared her meal," he whispered, as though deep down still hoping she would walk through the door and everything would return to the way it was before. But the truth was too painful to deny. The whole world was quickly swept up in a shared grief. The news of Diana's tragic death in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris as she was pursued by paparazzi sent shockwaves across the globe. In an instant, everyone was stunned. No one could believe such an immense loss. Diana, who had brought light and hope to so many, was now gone. Her death, so sudden and so heartbreaking, not only shattered the royal family's heart, but also left millions of people around the world silent and grieving over the loss of an icon. In the days that followed, Kensington Palace was covered in over 60 million flowers, each one a painful farewell to Princess Diana. Millions of people from all over the world came to mourn her, expressing their grief and sorrow. Her funeral attracted over 2.5 billion viewers, becoming the largest televised event in history, marking humanity's collective mourning for an icon taken too soon. Elton John's re-recorded version of Candle in the Wind played filled with emotion like a hymn to the shared sadness of the world, symbolizing the end of an era for a legend. So how could one tragic night in Paris bring such deep sorrow to billions of people around the world, and at the same time cause Darren to turn his back on the royal family? It wasn't just the death of a famous woman. It was the loss of someone the world had come to love, a woman who had connected with the public through her kindness and compassionate actions. For Darren, it wasn't only a personal loss for Diana, but the end of a chapter in his life he had been a part of, watching from the outside. Their special bond wasn't just about work. It was emotional, and Diana's passing made him feel that everything he had believed in and protected for so many years was now blurred in the secrets and deceit the royal family had kept hidden. April 9, 2005 marked a pivotal moment, the end of a chapter in the controversial story of the British royal family. At Windsor Guildhall, Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles officially wed in a small, simple civil ceremony, a stark contrast to the grand royal weddings typically seen. This was not just a personal event, but one that garnered worldwide attention as people closely followed every step of their journey after years of turmoil and challenges. Following the civil ceremony, a religious blessing was held at St. George's Chapel within the grounds of Windsor Castle. This gesture was meant to honor royal traditions and bless their union. However, for many, this wedding was not merely a joyful event. It symbolized a reaffirmation of something from the past, disputes, pain, and those who had been left behind. The wedding of Charles and Camilla was not just the closure of a love story, but an emotional transition for the royal family, especially after the scandals that had occurred in the years prior. To outsiders, it seemed like a new beginning, but for Darren McGrady, the former royal chef, that day represented something entirely different, something he couldn't bring himself to witness. "I didn't watch. I didn't go. I couldn't," Darren later admitted. "But for me, Princess Diana was one of them. I never did any charity work until I met her. And then I saw the huge difference she made in people's lives." At that time, he was living in the United States running a successful catering business. However, the royal world had never fully left him. He still kept in touch with many former colleagues from the palace, especially those who had worked closely with Diana. As the wedding day approached, his phone buzzed with messages. Some were lighthearted check-ins, while others were more somber. Former staff quietly acknowledged that they felt the same unease Darren did. There was an unspoken sadness among them, a shared feeling that something about this celebration didn't sit right. For Darren, the wedding of Prince Charles and Camilla was not simply a significant day for the royal family. It was a painful moment when he felt that history was being rewritten and everything Diana had once stood for seemed to be gradually erased. He couldn't help but feel that a story he had witnessed and protected for so many years was coming to an end. In the end, they got what they wanted. Darren later shared, but the price was very high. He was not just referring to the official union of Charles and Camilla, but also to what had been lost in the process, the memory of Diana, the beautiful moments she brought to the palace, now seemingly being hastily and indifferently erased. What hurt Darren the most was not just that Charles and Camilla were able to be together in an official relationship, but the fading of Diana's images and memories within the palace walls. While the world still saw Diana as a vibrant symbol of love, compassion, and humanity, her presence now seemed to be replaced and forgotten. The values Diana had built over the years, her charities and the warm interactions with the public, appeared to have been pushed aside in favor of events like this wedding. Darren's feeling was that Diana was slowly being replaced by a new story, one that he felt was unacceptable. Former colleagues within the palace couldn't help but whisper about the changes as Camilla moved into Clarence's house and later Buckingham Palace. To them, these changes weren't just about a new woman in royal life, but also the reconfiguration of the entire space and environment Diana had once established. Some of Diana's cherished charities with which she had long been closely involved were suddenly pushed aside quietly as if there was no longer room for the causes she had passionately pursued. Loyal staff members who had been by Diana's side since the early days now faced transfers or, in some cases, complete dismissal. These changes weren't merely about job positions or charitable organizations. They symbolized the quiet erasure of Diana's legacy, the life she had breathed into the palace. Her memories and presence seemed to be fading into oblivion, replaced by a new image, a new life that Camilla was slowly claiming. Darren couldn't help but feel the heartbreak in the air as everything Diana had built began to vanish or recede into the shadows. These changes not only caused him pain, but also made him question the true value of loyalty and memory within royal life. Through all these years, a single phrase of Diana's continued to echo in Darren's mind. It was the quiet yet decisive statement Diana had shared with him, a sentiment that haunted him: "I will never be queen. The girl who took my husband will one day become queen." Though spoken in a soft tone, those words lingered in Darren's thoughts, almost like a forewarning of what was to come. As he watched the televised wedding, the moment when everything seemed complete with the official union of Charles and Camilla, memories of Diana and those words remained alive in his heart. Darren couldn't shake the emptiness he felt, the subtle yet undeniable shift taking place within the palace that he had witnessed over the years. Though he had remained silent for so long, Darren had quietly observed the changes around him. He couldn't help but notice the small but undeniable shifts, from the removal of Diana's photographs to the overall change in the atmosphere within the palace. These changes felt like signs that Diana's past was slowly being forgotten, replaced by something new, yet equally painful. Darren's observations weren't just about visible signs, they were a deep awareness of unspoken things he sensed in his heart. Beneath his silence lay an undeniable feeling history was being rewritten, and Diana's legacy, though once loved, seemed to be fading in the eyes of the royal family. At the age of 63, when Darren finally decided to speak out, what he wanted to share wasn't about rumors or scandals surrounding the royal family. Instead, he wanted to talk about something that made him feel disgusted, something he had witnessed over the years as Camilla Parker Bowles moved into Clarence House and later into Buckingham Palace. It wasn't just about changes in the royal family's life, but about changes in the very essence of relationships and values that he had once held dear. According to Darren, I am now 75 years old, and I can't remember anyone except the Queen who has been there. This statement reflected a deep sense of regret and a feeling that everything had changed in an irreversible way. Darren felt that during the years when Camilla became a part of the royal family, a large part of royal history had been forgotten or erased, including the values and memories tied to Diana. Everything from loyal staff to the charities Diana cherished seemed to be pushed aside, and any trace of her in the palace gradually faded. This made Darren feel as though he had witnessed a part of history being hidden or swept away, replaced by a new reality that he couldn't recognize. That was why he chose to speak out, not to seek attention, but to protect the values and memories that he still respected and cherished. At first, the changes were subtle, easy for outsiders to overlook, but they were impossible for those who had loved Diana to miss. The soft, pastel-colored photographs that Diana had carefully chosen for her private rooms began to disappear. Family photos, especially the ones of Diana with Princes William and Harry in their happiest moments, slowly vanished from the corridors where they had once been proudly displayed. Her favorite flowers, forget-me-nots and lilies, were replaced with flowers chosen by Camilla. Furniture was moved around with some pieces completely removed. For Darren, this wasn't just a simple redecorating job. It felt like the story of Diana was being rewritten. He recalled Diana's story, and what hurt him the most was what had happened to those photographs. He recalled the way Camilla would glance at them with a subtle frown as she passed by. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. Within a few months, the photographs were moved to less visible places. Then they were relegated to private rooms. Ultimately, within 3 years, the last photograph disappeared completely. That was when Darren truly realized. He said it wasn't even about the person anymore. It was just a photograph. And even that was too much for her to tolerate. For Darren, that was the breaking point. In an interview that drew international attention, he made a statement that shocked the royal family. She really is a demon. He didn't say this to attract attention. He said that because after many years of silence, the truth needed to be spoken. Some people in the palace tried to explain everything away as routine updates. But for Darren and others who had worked closely with Diana, it seemed much more intentional. He said it wasn't just redecorating, it was a message, a way to replace everything Diana had represented. What made it even more difficult was the shift in energy within the palace. Darren recalled how Diana used to bring life and warmth to the space around her. She would often walk barefoot into the kitchen, ask for a simple glass of orange juice, or gently tuck blankets into cars for the homeless. Every action of Diana's reflected compassion and genuine care, creating a sense of peace and warmth for those around her. However, after Camilla arrived, Darren felt that light simply went out. The atmosphere in the palace no longer held the warmth and vitality that Diana had brought. The changes were not only physical but also spiritual, as the air in the palace grew colder, lacking the encouragement and kindness that Diana had always embodied. Darren admitted that although he had strong feelings about the changes, He could not deny that he supported the coronation of King Charles and Queen Camilla. However, he couldn't help but feel that the event carried a sense of sorrow and regret for what had been lost. That light simply went out, he shared, emphasizing that while the roles and power within the royal family may have changed, the human values and warmth that Diana brought were no longer there. Moving forward doesn't mean we bury the truth, and it doesn't mean we forget the price that was paid. This isn't about bitterness, it's about love. Love for Diana, and love for the truth, even when that truth is painful. So what truly drove Darren to finally break his silence after years of loyalty? Was it guilt, a longing for justice, or something deeper? Leave a comment with 1 if you feel for Diana, or 0 if you see it differently. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video that's popping up on your screen for more powerful stories. See you in the next one.